Mark Reynolds had never imagined that his first job outside Earth would bring him to one of the most advanced alien stations in the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition had finally opened limited access to humans, and Earth had sent a small group of engineers, diplomats, and scientists to prove humanity's worth. Mark was among them, a young engineer who always stayed calm and focused, even when others complained about long hours, unfamiliar tools, and the constant pressure of representing an entire species. The alien space station was enormous, with hundreds of different species moving through wide metal corridors that stretched for kilometers. Some were tall and thin like walking glass statues, others short and covered in fur, some with multiple arms, wings, or glowing eyes. Humans were one of the least powerful species present, and many aliens still believed humanity was weak, primitive, and unprepared to stand among them. Mark could feel the eyes on him every time he walked down a hall. Some looked at him with simple curiosity, others with amusement, and a few with open disdain. Mark was carrying a crate of replacement power cells for the upper reactor bay. He had been running back and forth for 3 days with barely any rest, but he never complained. He believed that if humans wanted respect in the galaxy, they had to earn it with results, not words. He had memorized most of the station layout, but one section was still confusing with overlapping pathways and shifting floor panels. The station changed configurations to accommodate different alien species, which meant hallways sometimes transformed without warning. He hurried around a corner, focused entirely on balancing the heavy crate, and did not notice someone standing directly in his path until it was too late. He collided with something soft but firm, and he heard a sharp intake of breath from the person he had bumped into. Time seemed to stop as the crate nearly slipped from his arms, and he instinctively steadied it before looking up. Standing before him was a tall woman with pale obsidian skin that shimmered like polished stone. Her hair was dark and flowed behind her like liquid shadow. Her eyes burned like red crystals, bright and intense, and her long fangs rested on her lower lip even when her mouth was closed. She was dressed in ceremonial armor made of silver plates with red markings that glowed faintly. Mark recognized her instantly from coalition briefings. She was one of the Valkrith, a species many whispered about with nervous voices. The Valkrith were known for their predatory appearance, immense physical strength, and strict code of honor. Even the strongest alien races treated them with caution. Mark realized what he had bumped into. To his horror, it was her lower back, almost like he had pushed directly into her from behind. He froze, knowing that many species saw accidental physical contact as a serious insult. The hallway had gone silent. Every alien in sight stopped walking, talking, or breathing. The air itself felt heavy. Lady Saranaval turned her head slowly, fixing him with a look that could have cut through steel. She did not yell or raise her voice. She only spoke one sentence in a calm tone, but it carried the same weight as a death sentence. "Do you want to die, human?" The words echoed through the corridor. Several aliens gasped. A small spider-shaped alien dropped the tablet it was holding. A reptilian creature took 2 slow steps back, as if trying to avoid being caught in whatever came next. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay steady. Running would make humans look cowardly. Begging would make them look pathetic. He reminded himself that he was an engineer sent to prove humanity deserved respect, not someone who would embarrass his species in front of witnesses. He took a slow breath. "I am very sorry. I was focused on my delivery work and did not see you standing there. The mistake is mine." Sarana stared at him, waiting for him to tremble or look away. Most species turned pale when she even glanced at them, but Mark remained still, respectful but composed. It was not that he was fearless. He was terrified, but he refused to show it. He believed that courage was not the absence of fear, but acting properly, even when fear was overwhelming. Serana's red eyes narrowed slightly. She could see the truth. The human was afraid, but he was controlling it. She had rarely seen that reaction from any species. Most showed either foolish arrogance or shaking terror. Calm honesty was rare. She turned her entire body to face him fully, towering over him like a dark statue of judgment. "You touched a Valkrith noble without permission," she said. "Many have died for less." Mark swallowed, but did not flinch. "I accept responsibility. If you must report me or file a grievance, I will comply." There was a flicker of surprise in her expression. She had expected him to fall to his knees or try to escape blame, like many other species often did when facing her. Instead, he stood with simple sincerity, acknowledging his mistake but not degrading himself. She studied him silently for a long moment. Then, instead of punishing him, she stepped back half a pace. Her voice lowered, almost carrying a note of curiosity rather than anger. "What is your name, human?" "Mark Reynolds," he answered. She looked at the crate he was carrying. "You are an engineer, one of your kind stationed here." "Yes." She stared at him again, then gave a small gesture with her hand, signaling that he could go. "Continue your work." The watching aliens whispered among themselves, shocked. A Valkrith noble letting someone off so easily was extremely rare. Mark bowed his head respectfully and walked past her, keeping his posture steady until he turned the next corner. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding in his chest. His arms trembled slightly from the combined stress and the weight of the crate, but he kept moving. The work still needed to be done, and humanity could not afford to fail now. Behind him, Serana remained standing in silence. Her aide approached cautiously, afraid to speak, but she did not need words to explain what she was thinking. She had expected the young human to break down or bow like everyone else. Instead, he had shown a strange blend of fear and courage that she found intriguing. The Valkrith valued strength, and strength did not always mean muscle or claws. Sometimes it meant standing through fear without running away. Serana had just seen that in a human. As she walked away, her thoughts shifted. She wondered if perhaps humanity was not as weak as other species believed. They had joined the coalition with barely any resources, but they had something that many civilizations had lost over millennia: the hunger to grow. She had seen it in the human's eyes. He was terrified, but he still chose pride and dignity. That was interesting. That was new. That was worth observing. As for Mark, the story of his accidental collision spread across the station before he finished delivering his final crate. Entire sections of the reactor bay were whispering about the human who bumped into Lady Serana and lived. Some thought it was a lie. Others believed he must have been protected by some hidden diplomatic agreement. But a small number of aliens, the ones who paid attention to small details, began to reconsider their assumptions. Maybe humans were not here to be treated as fragile newcomers. Maybe they were here to learn, adapt, and prove themselves. Mark did not know about the rumors spreading, but he did know one thing clearly. Humanity was being watched by powerful eyes, and any mistake could set back Earth's future. He was determined not to let that happen. His first major impression in the galaxy had been a collision with the one alien most feared by everyone. It was not the introduction he would have chosen, but he had survived it. Now he just hoped that this strange encounter was not the last time he would see Lady Serana Vall. Something told him that this was only the beginning of a story that would shape the future of human and Valkrith relations in ways no one expected. 3 days after Mark's accidental encounter, the space station had not stopped talking about the human who survived bumping into Lady Serana Vall. Everywhere he walked, he heard whispers in different alien languages. Some stared in disbelief, some with amusement, and a few with new respect. Mark did not let the attention distract him. He continued studying the engineering systems of the station, working long hours, solving problems, and gathering data that could help humanity improve its own technology one day. He was in the middle of recalibrating a coolant junction when his communication tablet beeped. The message was short and formal. Lady Sarana Val requested his presence in the diplomatic wing. The words shocked Mark. He checked twice to make sure it was not a mistake. She had personally asked for him. He wondered if she had changed her mind and now intended to punish him. Still, he could not refuse. If humanity wanted a place in the galaxy, someone had to step forward and face whatever challenges appeared. Today, that someone was him. Mark cleaned up, changed uniform, and walked through the long corridors to the diplomatic sector. The hallways were cleaner, brighter, and filled with guards from different species. Many looked at him as if asking silently why a human engineer had business here. When he approached the meeting door, 2 Volkrith guards blocked his path. They looked down at him with unreadable expressions before finally stepping aside. The door opened with a hiss. Inside was a high-ceiling chamber with dark metal walls illuminated by red and white lights. Lady Sarana stood near a large holographic console, studying rotating schematics of the station's energy grid. She turned her head as Mark entered and dismissed her assistants with a flick of her hand. When the room was empty, she faced him directly. "You came," she said simply. "I was asked," Mark replied respectfully. She studied him for several seconds. "You did not tremble when you entered a room full of my guards. Most would." "I was more afraid when I bumped into you the first time," he answered honestly. Sarana's expression shifted, as if she was deciding what to think of his answer. Finally, she nodded slightly. "I have questions about human engineering. You will answer them." Mark blinked. That was not what he expected. She gestured to the holographic projection. It showed part of the station reactor system. Sarana tapped one section. "This design is thousands of years old. Many species attempted modifications. They failed. Humans, however, submitted a proposal last month with an unusual solution." She looked directly into his eyes. "Explain your reasoning." Mark stepped forward and examined the floating diagram. His nervousness faded as his engineering instincts activated. He explained how humans often compensated for lower technological resources with unconventional problem-solving. He described how the suggested redesign did not overpower the system, but relieved stress by improving energy distribution across secondary relays. Sarana listened in silence, asking precise questions that tested his logic. Mark responded clearly, and when he finished, she turned off the projection. "Your people analyze problems differently," she said thoughtfully. "We do not have advanced technology yet," Mark replied, "so we solve problems with creativity and flexibility." Sarana's eyes narrowed slightly. "Creativity, that is something many species lost long ago." She stepped closer. "Humans are unpredictable. That can be dangerous, but also valuable." Mark did not know how to respond to that, but before he could speak, Sarana gave him another unexpected instruction. "You will return here tomorrow, same time." The meeting was over. Mark left the room, still unsure what was happening. The guards watched him as he passed, and once outside, he finally allowed himself a small breath of relief. He had survived the second encounter. The next day, and the day after, Sarana continued calling him. She questioned him about human engineering, development history, failures, and successes. Mark realized she was not only seeking technical knowledge, she was studying human thinking. Their conversations grew less formal. Sarana began to ask him about Earth culture, early space exploration, the challenges humans faced building ships with limited resources, and why humanity pushed forward despite having so little. Mark answered honestly. "We keep going because stopping means never reaching the stars. We don't want to stay small forever. We want to grow." Sarana considered that deeply. Valkrith culture valued strength and ambition. She recognized the same ambition in humans, even if they were weaker physically. She began to understand that the young species had something many ancient civilizations had forgotten: hunger. However, not everyone on the station was pleased with this new connection. A faction of alien diplomats believed that humanity was rising too quickly. They feared that if humans earned official recognition too soon, they would compete for resources and political power. These aliens worked in the shadows, planning to push humans out of the coalition before they established their footing. The saboteurs chose their moment when the station ran a large-scale energy transition cycle. It was a delicate operation. If anything went wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic. Late in the night, the main reactor suddenly triggered a cascading failure. Sirens wailed, emergency lights flashed, entire sectors lost power. Sarana was in the central control hub at the time, and even she could not restore the system quickly. The controls were unresponsive. One of her advisors shouted, "If the chain reaction continues, the reactor will breach." Another yelled, "We need someone who understands the human relay proposal." Sarana's eyes widened. Only one person on the station truly understood the new solution: Mark Reynolds. She immediately signaled the emergency channel. "Engineer Reynolds, report to the control hub at once." Mark was asleep in the human quarters when his communicator flashed. He jumped out of bed and sprinted through dark hallways lit by red warning lights. Some doors were sealed, others powered down. Smoke leaked from ventilation vents. He had never seen such chaos in the station. He made his way to the control hub, arriving breathless but ready. Sarana pointed at the failing systems. "The grid is collapsing. You said the secondary relays can balance overload. Prove it." There was no time to hesitate. Mark dove into the engineering console and began rerouting power manually. Sparks flew as cables overloaded behind wall panels. Several systems began shutting down permanently. Sarana watched silently as Mark fought through the disaster, typing commands faster than some aliens could think. 3 explosions sounded in the distance. Mark did not panic. He remembered an old human saying, "Focus on the next solvable task." He bypassed damaged circuits, activated an emergency sub-network, and redirected energy through 3 backup paths. The alarms slowly dropped in intensity. The reactor core stabilized. The catastrophic threat was averted only seconds before a full detonation. Silence filled the control hub. Many engineers and diplomats stared at Mark with expressions of shock and awe. Sarana stepped closer. "You saved the station." "Just did my job," Mark said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Later investigations revealed the truth. The reactor malfunction was not an accident. Saboteurs had intentionally triggered it to frame the humans, but their plan backfired. Instead of destroying humanity's reputation, they had given Mark a chance to prove human value in front of the coalition leadership. The trial was swift, and those guilty were exposed and removed from power. During the aftermath, a large assembly was held. Sarana spoke before hundreds of alien leaders. She pointed at Mark, who stood among human representatives. "This human used intelligence, calm, and courage to save lives. Not strength, not fear, but determination. Humanity has earned respect." Her words carried weight. Many leaders reconsidered their opinions of Earth. The coalition issued a formal recognition. Humanity would now receive full engineering rights within the station. Humanity would not be dismissed as weak newcomers anymore. When the meeting ended, Mark found Sarana waiting beside the hall. "You faced danger with fear, but without running. I respect that," she said. Mark smiled lightly. "I was scared the entire time." "That is what makes it impressive," she replied. "Only those who feel fear can show true courage." Mark realized then that this strange journey had only begun. There was still so much humanity needed to learn, build, and prove. But for the first time, the galaxy had looked at humans not with mockery or doubt, but with recognition. Sarana walked beside him as they left the hall, two unlikely figures from distant worlds, now connected by respect earned in a way neither had expected. Their alliance was the first step toward a future that would reshape the place of humanity among the stars, not through intimidation, but through strength of character, ingenuity, and the refusal to kneel even when the universe seemed overwhelming.